Hello, I'm Caroline Taylor, and this video is on dependency theory. Dependency theory is a macro-level theory that is used to explain why non-industrialized countries tend to fail economically. It focuses on the extreme disparities between nations, disparities such as income and standard of living being two main examples. Dependency theory emphasizes constraints imposed by the politically globalized economic order, the central argument being that there is an inequality in the distribution of power and resources in the global economy itself. This theory suggests that countries suppressed by outside powers are not guaranteed development through the suppression and therefore typically do not develop and are focused to remain dependent upon the suppressors. Theorists argue that the economic and political arrangements of the global capitalism are the root of this problem. The third world dependency is merely exacerbated through the integration of global capitalism. There is a constant asymmetric relationship between the central and peripheries in internal politics, economics, and class dynamics. Major participators in the struggle would include states, business elites, and labor forces. Underdeveloped countries tend to provide the world market cheap labor and raw materials. The world market then profits from these goods by creating a final finished product and then selling it back to the underdeveloped countries at a higher price. This depletes any kind of assets set aside for further development. Dependency theory actually counterattacks the modernized argument that traditional societies should remain poverty-stricken and subsequently fail to develop because they refuse to adapt modern technology. The way it counterattacks this argument is by stating and showing that it's not that these countries refuse to adapt modern technology, it's that they have sold all these raw materials and goods and everything that they could use to the world market. The world market makes something out of it and then sells it back to them at a much higher price than what the country sold it to the world market to begin with. So that depletes anything set aside into bringing in and developing further into getting said technologies so that their country can be considered industrialized and not third world. Dependency theory was first proposed as a concept in the 1950s by Argentinian economist Raúl Prebisch, but it only became more prominent in the 60s and 70s. His theory states that underdevelopment is caused by peripheral positioning in the world economy. Modern dependency theorists, such as Fernando Enrique Cardoso, considered that there was some level of development in dependency, while more radical thinkers, such as Andre Gunder Frank, argued that the only way to end dependency was through the creation of an entirely socialist state, i.e. a non-capitalist state. One way we as a class see this theory in action through our literature is in Aya. In Aya, there was a constant struggle for goods and power. Even those who had power were in a constant verge of losing what little they had gained. We see this through the character Sissoko. Sissoko was the owner of a beer company, and he was on the verge of losing this beer company, mostly because the people locally weren't buying it because they really couldn't afford it. We also see it through the young women who always dream of going to Paris, a city in France. France is among those countries considered developed, while the Ivory Coast, where the main characters of this story live, is considered underdeveloped. France actually at one point was the ruling power among the Ivory Coast, which is where the constant consumerist behavior, I believe, was promoted from. In fact, the book literally opens up with a promotional advertisement about beer. This is my source page in case there are any questions. This is where I got most of my information from. As you can see, there are really only two on here,